In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the radiator on this Ford F-350. It's located right at the front of your engine bay. Let's get started. At the top of the grill, you'll see 4 10mm headed bolts. Remove all of them. With those off, you should be able to pull the grill away. It's got some shields on the side, the push clips. Pull this off. Let's remove the coolant tank cap, unthread it, and set it aside. This is going to help the coolant drain a whole lot faster and, well, really drain, period, because this will hold a vacuum in the system as it drains, and if air can't come in, coolant can't come out. So with that set aside, let's drain the coolant. On the driver's side bottom of the radiator, you'll see the drain plug with the little petcock coming out the side. I have a drain pan underneath, and what I'm going to do is use a piece of hose that goes from here, and I'm going to route it straight down into my drain pan. That's going to create the least amount of mess. If you don't have a piece of hose that fits, that's totally fine. It's just going to shoot straight out the side, hit this shield, and run all down the frame. So worst case, just have a bigger collection bucket to get it all. With my hose installed, use a 19mm wrench or socket, break this free, and that should allow the coolant to start draining. Don't take this all the way out, but remove it enough until you start seeing coolant draining out. Well, looks like it's still making a little bit of a mess, but at least it's less than if it was shooting straight out. Let's just let this drain for a few minutes. Once it's done, we can cap it off. This is down to a drip, so I'm going to close it off. That just bottomed out. Give it a little bit extra, and that's it. This is a plastic plug, and it's got an O-ring in there, which is what's going to seal things up. You don't need to tighten it any more than that. Going to pull my hose out. Now at the top, we have to remove things that are clipped onto the fan shroud so we can pull the fan shroud away from the radiator. Let's start with this vacuum chamber right here. I'm going to pull the whole thing away as an assembly with all these lines and wires and everything that go to it. This was actually supposed to go right through here to the electronic fan clutch. Mine is broken. There is no connector on the fan clutch anymore, so that's why my connector is just hanging. But you will have to unplug this at some point. There's an 8mm bolt right here holding this vacuum chamber onto the fan shroud. Let's remove that bolt. There it is. Now you can lift this up and set it aside. Careful of all these lines so you don't break any of them. On the other side, we have the power steering reservoir, 8mm headed bolt. Remove this as well. Pull this off and set it aside. Let's remove the retainer for this hose off of the fan shroud. Use a trim tool and just pry it up. This one's brittle, so it broke. That's all right, we'll replace it. On each side of the fan shroud, you'll see that this tab is held on with an 8mm headed bolt. We have to remove this one and the one on the other side to continue pulling this fan shroud up. And this is the other side. Following this hose that we unclipped from the top of the fan shroud, we have to remove the clamp so we can slide the hose off of the radiator. Pinch it with some pliers, push the clamp back, and then typically you're going to want to twist this a little bit just to break it free and pull it away. On each side of the radiator, you'll see these rubber flaps. These are just here to direct the air and cover these openings so that the radiators can cool things down and the air doesn't just rush past it. But we have to remove them, so take a trim tool and remove the several push clips and retainers for these hoses that hold this all on. This being a plow truck, I have some extra wiring that goes through this, so I won't be able to completely remove it, but I'm going to do my best to unhook it and just push it out of the way. All right, looks like I was actually able to remove it all. So that's perfect because it gives us access to everything we need to get to. Now do the same on the other side. And now with these shields off all the way at the bottom, this is the driver's side, but you'll see the same on the passenger side. That 8mm bolt right there is actually holding the fan shroud onto the radiator at the bottom, so we have to remove that. Once again, there's one on each side to remove them both. Let's start with this one. There we go. Once again, do the same on the other side. Also on each side of the fan shroud, you'll see these tabs that lock in the lower shroud onto the upper shroud. We have to squeeze these tabs and push this through in order to unlock the bottom, which we have to do so we can clear the fan. Push this in, just like that, and we'll do the same on the other side. Before we completely remove this fan shroud, there is one last thing we have to do, and that is to unthread the fan and the fan clutch so we can remove it all as an assembly. That's the only way that this is going to come out. I have a 1 7/8 tool with an air chisel on the end of it, so I can hammer down on this. There we go. After a couple hits, it broke free. Now we can unthread the fan and the fan clutch from the water pump, and we can remove the fan and the shroud all as a unit. All right, there we go. With that out, let's start disconnecting some hoses, starting with the upper radiator hose. What you can do is get a pick and remove this snap ring that locks in the radiator hose. This one's at a slightly awkward angle, so you're gonna have to just kind of pick at it until it slides out. Don't lose these, we're gonna reuse them. As soon as you pull it out completely, we'll be able to slide the radiator hose out of here. There we go. Grab onto this and push it off. Do the same to the lower radiator hose, which is on the other side of the radiator. There we go. On the front passenger side of the radiator, we have a few hoses and pieces of hardware to disconnect to free this up. Starting at the top with this cooler. There we go. Two 8mm bolts, one for the condenser, one for the cooler that's behind it. And further down, another one of these hoses. If you have something to cap this off so it stops leaking, go ahead and do that. On the driver's side, there are two more 8mm bolts to remove. Let's get them both out. At this point, we don't have to remove the components that we just unbolted, but we do have to pull them off of the radiator. So we'll lift them up and forward. There's the AC condenser and the transmission cooler. These are unhooked, just gonna leave them here. On each side of the radiator, you'll see two 10mm bolts holding the top of the radiator in. These are the mounts, and this is the only thing holding the radiator in still. So let's remove both of these, one on each side, and take the radiator out. These bushings will come off of the radiator. We're gonna reuse them. Set these aside. On the driver's side, to have a little bit more space, you could remove the hood ajar sensor. Set this aside, and this should give you the space you need to swing your ratchet in here, because there really isn't a way to put a power tool since everything is so tight because of the air box. Now it's just a matter of lifting the radiator up and out of place. There it is. It is now time to install the new radiator. Slide it down in carefully and make sure it lines up with its mounting points on the frame. Let's reattach the radiator by putting on these mounts again. Make sure they line up and start in the bolts. When tightening these, all they need is about 1/8 of a turn after they bottom out. They're actually threading into plastic and they're just coarse threaded screws. So it's actually easy to over tighten these and strip out the plastic insert. And while we're here, let's mount this back up. Perfect. And put the other side mount on. Secure it with the 2 bolts. Just double check them by hand. Now we have to get the coolers resecured, and it looks like this one actually fell right into place, so that's great. The transmission cooler, that is. We just have to put the AC condenser back, raise it up, and get it to hook onto the bottom tabs. Press it down. Perfect. All right, let's resecure the cooler with that 8mm bolt. Make sure everything's centered up. Just snug it. If you're doing this by hand, about 1/8 of a turn after it bottoms out is plenty. And the AC condenser. And resecure this on the other side as well. Reinstall the line or the hose that goes on the bottom and secure it with the clamp. And do the same thing on the top. There we go. Grab the lower radiator hose and slide it over. Make sure it's fully pressed on. And we'll get that clip and lock it in. Slide that clip in the same way that it came out. There we go. So at this point, if you try to pull it back, it should not pull back. It should be locked in. The clip should be fully seated. Do the same to the upper radiator hose. Once that's pressed on all the way, slide that clip on. Okay, so now if you pull it out, it should not come off. Perfect. Bring in the fan and the fan shroud at the same time. With the fan shroud on, let's start the fan blade onto the water pump. Oh, there we go. Gonna thread it all the way on. And get our air chisel with that wrench adapter and just tighten it up. Give it a couple taps.
That should be plenty. Before you finish up putting the fan shroud on, don't forget to put the lower piece in. Just feed it through the top here. Oh, there we go. And then reattach the fan shroud, line it up with the hooks, and drop it in, as well as the mounting bolts at the top. There we go.
Now let's reconnect this lower fan shroud and secure it in. I already did that on the other side. Snap it in just like this, and it should stay in place. Now, sometimes, just so you know, these tabs right here, they break. You can use a wire tie or whatever you have that'll secure this lower fan shroud onto the upper. Just as long as it's secure, that's what matters. Let's resecure the fan shroud at the top. Use the two 8mm headed bolts and bolt this back on to the radiator. You might need to move it around a little just to get it to line up. Thread the bolt in and snug it up. That's pretty good right there. You don't want to over tighten this. This is just a little piece of plastic here that's holding on, so you don't want it to crack. And let's do the same on the other side. Start the bolt in and we'll tighten it up. Let's mount the power steering reservoir back to the fan shroud. It has that clip on the bottom tab that needs to line up and drop in. That locks it in on the bottom, and then the bolt locks it in on the top. Snug it up. Take this hose that goes to the coolant reservoir and put it back over the fan shroud. We'll have to resecure it right in the center here. I'm installing a wire tie that has a retainer on it. If you don't have that, just do your best to secure this. Let's reinstall this hose on the radiator right at the top on the passenger side. Push it all the way in and put the clamp back. Line it up with where it was and drop it down. Now reach down on the side of the fan shroud and clip in any wiring that you may have unclipped. Some vehicles are different, so depending on what wiring harness you have here, go ahead and clip it back on. Let's reinstall this vacuum chamber, turn it upright, and put it back into its position. And when you clip it on, this tab right here, it actually needs to line up with the fan shroud, so make sure that it does that, because that's what holds it on the bottom. Press it down and lock it in. Now all we have to do is put in the bolt that goes through here. Okay, nice and snug. That's properly secured. Once again, double check any wiring that might be here. At this point, you would also want to plug in your fan clutch. Once again, mine is broken and there's no more connector for it, so I'm going to tuck it right back where it was on this vehicle, but plug yours in. Now on the driver's side lower portion of the radiator, right where the drain plug is, I'm going to double check this to make sure it's closed. As you can see, it wasn't fully closed, so snug that up and then reinstall the bolt that holds on the fan shroud at the bottom here. My clip actually broke on the fan shroud, so there's nothing I can attach this to, but once again, there's one on each side. If you remember when we took this out, there's one here, one on the other side. Reinstall both of yours. Both of mine are broken, unfortunately. It's time to install this rubber shield that goes here that covers this gap between the radiator and the front clip. Resecure it with any push clips that you had securing it with here. I didn't have all that many push clips. Mine was a little bit damaged to begin with. And do the same to the other side. Take your grill, line it up at the bottom. It should have some clips that it snaps in with. Unfortunately, ours is broken. So I'm just going to push it, make sure that it lines up at the top, and resecure the grill with all the mounting bolts. It's time to fill and bleed our cooling system. What you want to do is put in the appropriate type of coolant into the reservoir, and you want to fill it all the way to the max line right here. If you have access to a vacuum coolant filler, you could use that too. Basically pulls a vacuum on the cooling system, tests for leaks, and then sucks all the coolant back in. I'm going to install my spill-proof funnel. Once you're done pouring coolant in it and it has stopped naturally bubbling air out, you want to turn the engine on and let it run and let it warm up. have the heat on high, on in the vehicle, with the blower on low. You don't want it to pull a bunch of heat away from the engine, but you want to feel it get hot so you know that the heater core is full of coolant. And then you'll see bubbles coming out of the reservoir as it warms up. Once the thermostat has opened up, of course, pay attention to the temperature gauge to make sure it's not overheating. But once it's open, it should have bled all of the air out of the system as long as it's no longer bubbling. Shut it off and let it cool down, and then you can cap it off. Once you've ran it and bled it and you know that everything else is good, go ahead and put the cap back on, and at the end it'll ratchet. So give it a few clicks, and there you have it. Job is done.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.